Alright, hello. In this video we're going to cover everything that's left to cover for your furniture brief. So that's going to go over Uving again, for those of you that want to see it. It's going to go through organizing your scene and preparing it for Substance Painter. It's going to go through exporting your textures from Substance Painter and also preparing your assets so they can be put into Unity. We're going to go through Unity, starting that up, getting everything set up in there, imported. That should be us done. Also taking screenshots, and that should be us done. Alright, so I'm using this example scene, and I'm just going to work on table and lamp because they're kind of an example of a slightly simpler shape and a slightly more complex shape. But to start with, we have all of this stuff in our outliner, and I want to kind of organize the scene a bit more. And hopefully as you've been working, you've taken my advice and actually been deleting your history and kind of saving versions of your work. Let's delete all wet type history. These are empty groups. If you shift click on the plus of any group, it will open anything that's inside it as well, not just the first layer. And now let's take a look at what we have here. So we have a floor, let's call this floor. And we have a wall, call this wall. And we only need one wall for, actually let me save that. Let me save scene as example UVs, right? Okay, so we don't need the other wall because both walls are going to be the same. We only need to UV the wall once. Now let's find, what's this? This is a socket. So the rest of these, since I'm not going to work with them, I'm actually going to hide them. Just because I don't want to work with them. I think I'll leave the socket actually. Socket. And just for the purposes of this video, I'll just delete the others so they don't clutter. And I'll call this lamp. And I'll call this table, right? So this is a different scene. This is not the scene where you've arranged your entire room. This is a separate scene, right? And in this separate scene, we want to make sure that every individual unique asset, so not duplicates, just the unique assets are here, and we're going to center them in the world. So we're going to take the floor and hold X, and actually we need to make sure that our pivot point is at the top of the floor. There we go. And we're going to center it in the world. And I'm going to hide it. I'm going to do the same here. Now for your walls, you want to put the pivot point on the corner. I want to put the pivot point on the corner, okay? Why do we do this? Because I can then duplicate the wall and then hold V and snap it to the other wall, right? That's why we do that. So I'm going to do that, put it there, and I'm going to rotate it. I could have grabbed the other wall, but I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to, again, snap it to the center of the world. Hold X. Snap it. Okay, let's hide that. Grab our desk. We want our pivot point to be at the bottom of the feet, right? We don't want it to be anywhere near the middle. You want your pivot point to be there where it's going to snap to either the floor or the wall. You don't want it to be in the middle of nowhere. And when we get to Unity, you'll see why that is. Let's hide our desk. This little guy, put the pivot point just right against the back. That's how you're going to place it on the wall. And we can place that in the center of the world as well. There we are. And here as well. This as well. I think we can try and... Ooh, there's something interesting under there. That's alright. We'll just go with it. We'll go with it for now. Alright, so that's on the floor as well. Because when you drag your assets into Unity, they'll be dragged in kind of like, pretend you're holding X, they'll be dragged in like this. So if your pivot point is somewhere here and you drag them into Unity, they're going to fall through the floor. For those of you that have not seen that happen before. And I would kind of like this to point forwards, not rotated. But it's a bit difficult to do that for this. So, you know, I think I'm going to actually have to leave it like that just because I'm not quite sure how to get it pointing that direction. I could press D, click on this face, so it's like pointing in the direction, and then you can go to modify. Let me just take D off. Go modify, bake pivot, and now when you do that, see you have all this stuff here. Let's do a freeze transformations first, and now let's go and modify bake pivot, Where did it go? And now it's giving me all of this stuff. So it's baked the location of this pivot. I think if I, let's do it to the top one so that it's 40. There we go. Okay. What if I bake pivot? And that's how you can straighten your. That's how you can straighten your assets. There we go. And now it's pointing forward. And now I can put my pivot point back down to the center. Match it up with that little center point. All right, cool. We got a lamp pointing forwards. Great. Great. Freeze. Put it in the center of the world. All right. And now I'm gonna make everything visible. And this is what it's gonna look like. A bit crazy, right? That's fine. Select everything. Freeze transformations. Right. Now, I'm not too worried if they're too big or too small at this moment. When we put them into Unity, there's some things we can do there to change it. As long as they're all to scale with each other, I'll be happy. Right? As long as they're all to scale with each other. Now, what do we do now? Let's put these in a group and call them Geo No UVs. Geo stands for geometry. I'm gonna check that I'm recording. I'm recording. Very good. Let's hide the first one, and then we duplicate it, and this one we're gonna call this Geo UVs. All right, and we're gonna hide them all, and we're just gonna go through them one by one. So we have the floor and the floor UVs. Just leave them like that. You want a square floor, perfectly square with perfectly square UV, no detail, no nothing. That's fine. That's fine. You've created a tile of floor. You could probably even make it smaller. I'm gonna leave it. Now the wall, I don't think we need this back panel, honestly. I don't think we need it. So for now, I think I'm gonna delete it. So same with this top one, and same with these sides. I don't believe we need them. I'm gonna delete them, actually, before I get started. And the bottom ones we definitely don't need. So this is what you have instead. So this thing, let's UV that. And I believe, I don't even know if, oh, it already has one, right? So it already has one. We don't even need to mess with it. We can just leave it. It's a perfectly square wall piece. So keeping it perfectly square and keeping your UVs perfectly square will make texturing these large spaces a little easier. And we'll go through that later on, like I said. So open up our socket, and that should be pretty easy. UV editor. I don't even know if it has one. Just give it a planar. Camera based. You don't even really need camera based. And then just click, double click. It's gonna select all the ones around. Shift X, split those, unfold, and layout. That's all you need. Lamp. Here's where it gets interesting. Okay, so let's do a planar. Let's hide our thing here. Let's do a planar and let's do a camera based. So how do you UV complex stuff? How do you UV complex stuff? You have to have a plan, essentially. You have to have an idea of what you're actually trying to get and how you're going to texture it. It's going to be difficult for you guys because you've only just started texturing, essentially. And until you've run into all the issues the texturing gets you to run into, it's going to be hard to understand what you're actually looking out for. But basically, you just want any hard edges that are hardened, you can cut quite easily. So, for instance, this thing and this thing I can easily cut. Any loops that go all the way around, kind of like these are going to now, right? Is there a cap on the back? There's a cap? No, there isn't. Oh, there is a cap on the back. Hold your horses. Hold up. Hold up. What is that? What is that? You're that. We don't need that. No one's gonna see that. Yeah. Anyway, if you have a loop like this, you want to cut part of it. Because if I unfold this now, it's gonna turn into a loop, but it doesn't make sense because it wants to be stretched out. So let me cut it and show you. Right? It wants to stretch out. If it's a circle pointing, if it's a loop that's actually facing upwards, it won't want to do that. So if I grab like this loop, and that it won't stretch out like this because it wants to be straight. This is the shape, the real shape. But the real shape of the other loop is going all the way around, and it wants to be cut so it can unfold. Now spheres are annoying. I dislike spheres, which is very weird because I'm an organic modeler. But spheres are kind of tricky to work with. I just usually cut them down the middle and I leave them. I don't worry about it too much. It's just too much of a hassle to worry about spheres. You have more important things to UV. You unfold this, the half sphere, it's going to be like this. There's going to be a bit of stretching. That's inevitable with a sphere. Okay. Loops like these, let's isolate this. Okay, so these points you'll never see. So make your life easier by removing them. Right, you'll never see those. And now our UVing is easier. Why? Because we can just do this. Double click, cut, unfold. Hollow tubes just need to be cut one way so that they can unfold themselves. So hollow tubes like this need to unfold themselves. If they have a cap, just cut off the cap as well. If you want to keep it, you don't have to delete it if you want to keep the cap. You just need to cut that UV as well, so it's separate. So that's what you do with hollow tubes. Thankfully, the rest of this model is quite straightforward because it's mostly spheres and hollow tubes. When we get to the bottom, it's going to be a different story, but let's just cut these. I believe, oh, we have a few vertex. You can work directly from the UV editor as well. You don't always have to, oops. You don't always have to, I made a mistake there. Okay, let's delete the other one at least, the one at the bottom. And this one here, grab this one. Oh, that's already hollow, very good. And this one, we can hollow that out. And we could probably like pull these edges upwards a bit as well. Our pivot point's really bad. I'm not gonna do that now. Okay, and we need that bottom one because you can see it. The top one you can't, the bottom one you can. So let's cut the rest of this. I'm gonna cut this around the back because you rarely see the back. And I'm gonna cut this one all the way around and at the back as well. Probably back here. There we go. And now this hollow tube is going to unfold like that. The circles are going to unfold like that. The tube's going to unfold like that. And the cap is going to unfold as well. All right. Grab these fellas, do the same. Ooh. Oh, it's because the circle has a hole. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, in that case, let's cut it the other way. In that case, let's cut it like around the top. And see what happens if there's a hole in the bottom. Just cut it down the middle. Just like don't. Spheres are just not meant to be unfolded like this, but we use them sometimes, so we have to unfold them. And this is good enough. Leave it like that for now. Now we have this tube. Is it a hollow tube? I believe so. I'll cut it from the back as well. Here. Unfold. There we go, hollow tube. What is this thing? This stuff. So this appears to have a cap at the top. This is what camera base is useful because sometimes I don't even need to look at the model. I can just look at this. And after you've looked at UVs for a while, it's going to become easier to just kind of recognize what you're looking at. Kind of like the matrix. So I'm going to cut this cap off it. Right? And then this should be able to unfold like that. And I believe it's already been cut this way, actually. Now, I don't want to cut it there because it's kind of closer to the front. So I'm going to cut it right at the back instead. And it's going to give the exact same effect, just moving the cut. Why is this going all the way around? Oh, use our trusty isolation. Oh! Darn. Let's see if we got that back or not. Hopefully Maya gave me a crash save, because that would have been sad. This, folks, is why I delete your history. Alright, we have a crash save, thank goodness. Come on, wake up. Gosh, that was close, wasn't it? Whew. Save scene as desktop. SD7 desktop. Example UVs. Yeah, so this is why you, 1, save regularly, 2, save versions, and 3, delete your history. Right, so you got a first-hand account of how that happens. Let's grab this, see it, get rid of this stuff. Right, and I was just saying, it's gonna just unfold the same way. These things should not be so, gosh darn it. See, this is the difference between, this is how, like, the cleaner your topology is, the easier it is to do certain things later on, double clicking and other things. And the only thing left is this, which I'm just going to cut here underneath. To be honest, let me look at this. You will never see it. So there's some kind of issue here that's happened, but that's all right, because what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to delete this whole inner bit, including this, and delete this inner, and I'm just going to double click this, extrude, and scale in a teeny bit. Oops, I think I have something enabled. Yeah, take this off. There you go. Right? And that way you're not wasting this huge area of UV space, right? I'm just gonna, no, not the whole thing, please. Just this. I just want to, gosh darn. There, let's do that. Unfold. There we go. And we can cut it as well. We can cut it so it's a little easier to unfold. It wants to do that. Great. Let's grab everything. And I've literally just cut through, following the principles of how to unfold and how to cut. Unfold everything, lay it out. Now, your layout options, and I say this every time, you want to have one of these. I'm going to put it horizontal. UV ratios. You want UV ratios to be on. You want to set your texture set size to 1024 and put 2 pixels in both of these areas. You also want to translate and rotate shells. Click apply, and you're going to get the cleanest possible, well, not the cleanest possible, but quite a clean layout. But nonetheless, we're going to put a lot of our assets on the same sheet, so I'm not worried about this layout at the moment. Let's move on to our last asset, which is this table. Let me study it for a bit to see what it's like and how we're probably gonna do it. So we don't need those bottom ones. We don't need these either, because we're not gonna just trash them, because we're not gonna see them. So might as well just save ourselves the work. Why is there double? What is that? There's some extra like geometry there. And here as well. We don't need that. Interesting. Interesting. That's fine. Okay, that's fine. I think these also have, I'm trying to change my language. These also have these caps here. And again, won't see them, trash them. Why am I not deleting the inside? Because the inside you can see from above. So that's me answering a question nobody asked there. Is there anything we need to delete on these ones? Yep, so all of these will also have caps we need to remove. And the whole purpose of this is, one, kind of saving resolution, but more importantly, you're saving yourself UVing. Now, something I just noticed, what's going on here? Okay, so this is actually, okay, alright. Well, if you do this sort of thing, you kind of want this to be a little more like that, just so it's not like 100% flush with it, but not an issue at the moment. And these bottom ones, I mean, will you see it from below like that? I don't even know. For the sake of this, I'm actually going to remove all of these bottom faces, just for the sake of this tutorial. Depending on what you're doing, if you take any shots from like this or something, maybe you see it, so it might be justified if you want to take those shots. I'm not going to, I'm just going to make this easier for me so that it's easier for you to watch. Okay, now this is going to be a little easier to UV because we have to do less cutting. And cubes are a bit laborious to cut to begin with. So let's give it a planar, let's give it a camera base, let's save, and delete our history. Really should just put this on the end here. Cool. Now let's grab these planks here because they're going to be very easy. We don't even need to cut them. We can just unfold them because they're already in that shape. These things I'm going to have to check out a bit more carefully because I'm not 100% sure how we're going to do them yet. These things, did I check these for stuff? No, I didn't. Okay, so let's make these easier to do as well. I forgot to... Actually, do you see the... Yeah. You see a bit, don't you? So maybe just these ones. Yeah, just these ones, because those ones you definitely don't see. And now you have these two like separate planks, which is kind of funny. Right, so let's do this then. Move this over, move this up, and then you have these ones and these ones. These ones you can just unfold, they're just individuals. These ones you can cut on the edges here. And what's going to happen is, when we unfold them, let's see what happens. Are they all separate from each other? No, they have the bottom, don't they? So let's unfold them. Ah, okay, we made something. There we go, let's cap them like that. Unfold. And do these have any connections to each other? I don't think they do, they're all separate planks as well. Yep, okay, that's fine. Separate planks. That's it, that's those parts. Table top piece, this literally is just a plane because you don't need anything else. You don't see any other stuff there, so you can just unfold that straight away. And this thing, let's unfold it straight away and see what happens. So it's not so bad. I would say this is fine, honestly. You could mess around and like cut these edges. I think it's alright. I think it's okay. Yeah, I think that would be okay. So it's just these ones, isn't it? Oh gosh, these are going to be a bit tricky. Let me take a better look at them. So we cut them at the bottom. We have this sharp cut here. We want to cut them probably at this. Let's just cut them from there and see the result, because we obviously want that to be a sharp transition. Unfold them and see the result. So we're getting some stretching here on the leg, which we can... What is the result when we open that up? Well, that's supposed to be a sharp transition as well, so I suppose that's not too much of an issue, but there's not really enough of a change to justify messing with it. What about the centerpiece? Is there any point in separating the centerpiece? No, I'm just gonna leave it. There's no need to mess with it. It's a good enough thingy. What about the top? And I think the top is fine as well. Yeah, they're fine. Okay, so we just need to cut them one way. Alright, so that's those done. Layout. Lovely. Now, notice that, let's make everything visible. So our walls are going to be separate. They're going to be separate pieces, so they're all going to have individual UVs. Depending on how many assets you have, sometimes you can combine things into the same UV sheet. And now you can see that when I've laid out my table, I have a lot of empty space at the top. Now there's no point in wasting that space. We could just put another asset there. So I'm going to try and actually put all of these assets together so that I can waste as little UV space as possible. So I'm going to select all these free assets. I'm going to select all of the UV shells, and I'm going to lay them out. And now I'm going to try and arrange them a bit better. So what do I mean by a bit better? I mean things which are things which are the same material, ergo wood, are going to be pointing in the same direction. So I'm going to want all of my wood to be pointing in the same direction. So all of this stuff pointing upwards, I'm going to want it to point sideways, like that, right? And I'm going to just try and keep everything horizontal, I think, for this. And these things are all metal, and you can kind of tell because they're quite small. So this is all probably the lamp. So I'm going to put that to the side for now. And you can see now that we've laid them out together what the difference in scale is. So you can see how big the table is compared to the UVs of the lamp, whereas before we had this be as big as this, and it didn't make sense. So it's useful to pack things together if they're going to be near each other or a similar type of thing. And you know, there's other things like considering how much resolution you're using, but I won't go into that right now. I'll just lay out these UVs and get us ready for Substance Painter. I, however, am not editing these videos so that I can get them out quicker. So I'm either going to be quiet or talking. So there you have it. There you have it. Let's put this here. And notice I'm putting all of them as neat as I can. I'm trying to waste as little space as possible. I'm not being as careful as I can be. I've been very, very like efficient in the past when doing certain characters and stuff, and literally leaving pixels, barely pixels between different assets. But for now, I'm not being particularly precious about it because I don't want to bore you excessively. But I am still trying to be quite efficient. But see, this is almost a bit too much. I think it's just about okay, that one. It's just about enough space between all of them. And you can always zoom in more and kind of see how much more space you can get. So I could probably like push this up a little bit, push these up a little bit, push this up a little bit, and push this up a little bit. So you can go in and you can make more adjustments. I think we're almost done. And when we go into Substance, you're going to see why we're doing this and why we're keeping everything the same direction. And hopefully it's going to make a little more sense as to what the point of this was. The point of UVing a certain way, laying out the UVs a certain way, having good topology, all this stuff. So hopefully it will become a little more apparent in a moment. And thankfully, I actually have a tablet here with me, so I can properly show you the UV processes. Oh my gosh, we forgot this thing. Cut it at the top, cut it at the bottom, cut it at the back, and remove this nonsense. There we go. Unfold. I'm not even going to try and lay it out because there's no need at the moment. Alright. Now you might be wondering, man, these UVs are so small. Like, are they going to be alright? They are quite small. They are quite small, but you have to keep in mind that the table is absolutely massive. So compared to the table, they're the correct size. The table is simply going to need a much bigger texture resolution anyway. So it should be alright. Because we're going to increase the resolution overall. So these tiny things will get more pixels in them than they would have otherwise. And you know, this is a quick presentation. I don't want to be spending too long here, but it's just, I don't know, you get used to just being as careful as you can after a while, and you get used to wanting to make things very efficient. It's just good practice. It's a good, and by good practice I don't mean, oh, it's good exercise to do this. I mean it's a good standard. I mean practice in that sense. It's a good standard. And it's useful. And I can tell you from working in the masters, people who don't do this stuff, people who forget these fundamentals, you just have to clean up their work afterwards, and it's really not fun. So this obviously there's still some space missing, and you can tell how you could put more assets here. So if you had more assets, you could fill up a sheet with much more assets. I'm going to leave it like this for the moment, and I'm going to, I believe this is all we had, isn't it? Oh yeah, all these free. I'm going to select these free, and I'm going to save actually, and I'm going to duplicate this group and hide it, and this one I'm going to call for substance. Okay, bring it all back. Now the floor and the wall I would texture in substance separately, right? And if I get to it today, I'll show those a little later on. But for these, because they're all on the same map, I can texture them at the same time. But if you just put them all together in substance at the same time, it's just gonna get a little overwhelming. Even if you have to combine them afterwards, even if you have to combine their textures afterwards, it's more useful to texture them separately. But of course, it may be useful to actually be able to see them at the same time whilst you're working in substance. So I'm going to take this lamp now, and I'm actually going to position it up here. And I'm going to take the little socket and I'll position it at the back here, just so we can see it a bit clearly, right? And now I'm going to click the socket. I'm going to hold right click on the socket just because, just because it's right at the top. Hold right click, assign a favorite material and Lambert, and this is going to open up the attribute editor. If not, it's up here. And right at the back here, you have Lambert 2. If you have a little arrow, you can right click the arrow and it's going to give you a list, and the new Lambert will be at the bottom. And we just want to rename this to m_socket. So material underscore socket. We're going to do the same for the lamp, favorite material, Lambert. We're going to call it m_lamp. And again for the table, favorite material, m_table. So why did we do this? And actually, let me change the colors as well. Let me just change the colors just a bit, just for, and you have to untick this and tick this, just for example's sake, just so you see the difference. So each of these have a different material now. There's two different types of coloring like this. There's two different types of materials. One is these, which are separate materials on each asset, which allow you to put them all into substance together, but work on them separately. Or to put them all into a game engine, but give them separate materials, separate colors and stuff, right? And there's another type, which is called an ID map, which I'm not going to teach you about yet. It's not complicated, but if I tell you it with everything else at the same time, it's going to get complicated. So let me Control-Shift-S for save as, and I'm going to put example substancing or something like that. And it's like, why do you keep versions that are incrementing? Like, you have all the same assets in the scene. It's about consistency. It's about just in case anything goes wrong. It's useful to have those assets back there. All right, so let's select all of this stuff. They're all UV, they're all modeled, they're in the center of the world. I'm going to actually freeze the transformations of these ones that I moved. And it's like, oh, but then you have to move it back. And it's like, it's fine. The UV's ones are still there. This is just we're going to use these just for Substance Painter as UV assets, as UV'd assets. We're going to put in our UV'd ones into Unity. So let's grab these ones for Substance, File, Export Selection. The first one and the third one. You don't want to tick Smooth Mesh, just the first one and the third one. And I believe that should be alright. If you have animation on, untick it. You don't need animation. I'm going to throw it on desktop. I'm going to call it assets example underscore low, or just low. If you have a high resolution mesh, if you have a high resolution version of one of these assets, make sure that high resolution version is right in the same position as the low resolution. So if I had like a high resolution map, like lamp or something, I would need that to be in the exact same location as the other one. So bear that in mind. And you would have to export this separately. So I would have to export it as lamp high poly or something. You want to export that separately if you have a high resolution version. Now for these ones, we're just going to use low resolution versions. I've shown you high resolution version baking with the Weather Cows characters, so hopefully you'll be able to recycle that information. Let's minimize that, and let's open up Substance Painter. And we're going to go through, we're going to do some basic texturing. I'm not going to go in too deep. I'm going to teach you my principle. And then I'm going to export the textures, export the assets, open up a Unity scene, and show you how to put your assets into Unity and how to give them some textures. We're not going to worry about it looking good yet. We're just going to show you how to put stuff in there, and we'll worry about it looking good probably next week. So let's go to File, New, and here you want to choose Unity 5. So you want to go down to Unity 5. And you want to select the asset that you want. So let's go on desktop and let's choose our assets example. And keep your document resolution at 2048. And okay. And it's going to do this. But notice in your texture set list, and I've shown you how to arrange your panels before. If you haven't seen how to arrange your panels, watch the previous videos on Substance Painter. To arrange your panels, I'll just go through it quickly in case anyone's opening it for the first time. It's going to be crazy like this. Grab your layers, put it in your texture set list. Grab your properties, put it in your texture settings. Now you only have 2 windows to worry about. Right, anyway, I won't go through Substance basics again because I've done that several times already, but the main thing is if you go to your texture set list, those materials that we applied have separated the assets into their separate pieces. They weren't separated because we exported them because they're actual separate objects. Because notice, let me just duplicate these and give them all a Lambert 1. Give them all the default Lambert and File, Export Selection, something on the desktop. And let me go back here and click New again and select that asset. Now notice what's going to happen. They're all back here, but we only have one texture set list. So it has nothing to do with the fact that your assets are separate. When you export them as an FBX, they get packed together. One of my lecturers used to say that a FBX is a sandwich of information. Like you take everything that you've selected and put it all together as one object. But because we've given them separate materials, Substance picks up on that and actually separates them for us. Like it knows that that's what we want it to do. Let's throw it in there once more. Right, discard. Right, and now we need to go down to our Bake Mesh Maps. And we just need to go to Texture Setting, Bake Mesh Maps. Leave it at 2048. This is something you can't change. After you've baked it once, you'll have to bake again if you want to change it. And we don't have a high poly mesh for any of these, so I'm just going to click Use Low Poly Mesh as High Poly Mesh. And I'm going to bake all... Let's try that. Bake all texture sets. I'm worried that we might have an issue, but let's take a look. Okay, so I think we did have a bit of an issue. Let's hide the lamp. Look at that. It's like a coaster, right? It's like we got a coaster on there. That's because the lamp was on top of it, and our high poly is essentially this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export each of these separately as well. So lamp underscore low. Press G on my keyboard to redo. Table underscore low. And I won't do it for the socket. The socket is fine, I believe. So I'm going to go back to, the lamp is kind of okay because you never see the bottom anyway. So I think the lamp doesn't have any issue. But the table itself, we had this issue, right? So I'm going to go back to Bake Mesh Maps. And I'm going to, instead of clicking Use Low Poly as High Poly, I'm going to manually import the low poly, the high poly. You know what I mean? I'm going to manually give the table its own mesh again. And then I'm not going to click Bake All Texture Sets, because that's going to do it for everything. I'm going to do it just for the table. And now it's fine. And that's created all these little maps for us down here that we can start texturing with. Now, how do I, oops, my tablet is the wrong way around once more. Happened last video as well. So, I've shown you some ways to do metal already, I believe. I'm not sure. I'm going to show you some ways how to do metal. I'm going to show you some ways how to do wood. I'm going to show you how to do a plug socket. But the first thing I'm going to show you is my general overall method that I use almost with everything. So when I start on a model, say we're starting with the lamp, I do several things. First, I create a base color. On top of that base color, I create a detail color, which I use one of these baked maps for. On top of that, I create a folder for every different material that I'm going to have on here. And in that folder, I will put in a separate color as well as a base color. And then on top of that, on top of those base colors, I start adding detail painting. And that's how I texture, right? So let's start from the beginning. Let's give ourselves a base color for the overall model. And we're going to use all this information this time. Before we did a stylized painting tutorial and we didn't use them, now we're going to use them. So I'm going to take off, I believe, is all of this metal? I think parts of it may be plastic. So I'm going to take off metal, I'm going to take off normal and height, but I'm going to set a base color of something, maybe something like this, something gray, probably. And I'm going to set its roughness, which is how reflective it is, to about this much. And if you hold shift and I believe it's right click, yeah, you can rotate your window. I'm going to stop right here straight away and go to Window, Views, Shader Settings. No, Display Settings. Right, and before I do anything else, I'm going to change my environment map from Panorama to Studio Free. And this is going to create a 3-point lighting system that has warm and cold lighting. So here's your cold lighting, it's very blue highlight there, and here's your warm lighting. So that was your cold lighting and this is your warm lighting, right? And this just gives you a much clearer look as to how the asset may look in Engine, whereas Panorama is very specific to a certain background, right? Where this is literally free lights rotating around the asset. It's a bit more easy to see the detail. And now you can see how the shininess is quite a lot more prominent or non-prominent. So I'm going to leave it at something like this, something not very detailed. And I'm just going to call this base. And on top of this base, we have separate assets here. So I think I'm going to create my detail color after I create my folders this time. So I'm going to create a folder for every separate thing here. And I believe I'm going to have shiny metal. I'm going to make copper. And I think I'm going to have plastic. Right, and I'm going to put in, I'm going to 1, 2, 3, right, so base color in each of those. And to start with, I'm just going to give them really bright colors just so I can see the difference. And I'm going to take everything off except for color for them for now. Start simple, then get complex. And you might be saying, oh, I can't see anything. That's because the very top one is taking up all the space, right? So let's give each of these folders a black mask, meaning it won't affect anything. And starting from the top, from plastic, I'm going to give a paint layer to this black mask. And I'm not going to paint in what I want to be plastic. I'm going to click this selection tool, and I'm going to click object, and I'm going to click the whole object that I want to be plastic. Now I believe this is all supposed to kind of be copper, but maybe we could like use some plastic bits in some of these areas. This is all one object. Interesting. To change your views, go here and go to 3D, 2D, 3D, or 2D. Select both. And you can see that also our separate texture sets are visible in separate areas of our 2D view. I'm going to go back to this paint. I'm going to select the polygon selection instead, which allows you to select polygons. And I'm just going to try and find where this is. So this is this. No. Okay, so we can go to this one as well, the checkerboard, and that's a whole UV. You can just select the whole UV, you don't have to mess with it. Yeah, that's fine. Anything else? Anything else I want to be plastic? I think the rest are kind of okay. These metal balls, part of me wonders, wouldn't they be plastic? But I'll just leave it like that for now. I won't. We'll keep it fairly metallic. This one. Maybe I'll do these ones actually. These little thingies. Where? Come on. Click, click. Works better with a mouse. This tool. There we go. I'll leave those as they are. Let's move on. Black mask. Paint. And the reason I add a paint is because now I can toggle this selection on and off, whereas if I went straight into painting on the mask without an extra layer, I won't be able to turn it on and off, whereas now I can be non-destructive is the word. Okay, so copper, I kind of want this to be copper. I don't know why I've made it blue. It's going to change, don't worry. And I kind of want these little balls to be copper as well. I think... or brass or whatever. And this bottom thing, I imagine, would probably be mostly brass. Yeah, let's make this brass and the bottom copper. It's up to you, really. But and the last one, I'll give a paint as well. And this is the rest of them, isn't there? This is going to be shiny metal. Okay, all right. Now let's go through them. Notice if you click between the color and the mask, it shows you the different layers associated with them. Just a little tip there. Okay, let's start with shiny metal, because it's straightforward. I'm going to go back to my paint so I don't see that wireframe. Oh, I missed one. I missed a few, actually. Sorry, that's not supposed to be there. And plastic, you want one here. Come on. Why you do this? It's this, no? Oh, it's because it's on 0. Dummy. What is that? What is this? Ah. Yeah, okay. And then this should be like that. There we go. Anything missing? Don't know what this is. Well, it looks like it's supposed to be yellow anyway. Anything else? Have I missed anything? No, we're good. All right, let's get started. Let's go to our shiny metal. And now, go to 3D. Just gonna save, Control-Shift-S. All right, maybe just Control-S. Put it on the desktop and call it example text. So let's change our base color to something closer to what we want. I'm going to use something a bit bluey, right? And if you're doing shiny metal, you want to turn on your metal, and put it 100% metallic. And you also want to turn on your roughness and play with how rough this metal is going to be. So it's probably not going to be absolutely chromatic. That doesn't look good. So maybe bring it up to something, depending on what kind of metal it is. So now this already looks a bit aluminium-y, aluminium-like, but it's still a bit CG. Let's hide our other colors as well so it doesn't look like a cartoon. It's still a little bit CG, and I also notice this edge needs to be softened. So we can do a few things. We can just play around with the color or do some other stuff. I'm going to do something else first. I'm going to duplicate that, right? And I'm going to add a filter. Actually, no, I'm going to duplicate it, get rid of these things, and just change the color to something darker. So I have like a light color, and then on top of it I have a dark color. And on this dark color, I'm going to add a filter, and I'm going to select one of these metal finishes, right? So you can mouse over them and see what the difference is and what kind you want to use. I want something that looks a bit like aluminium, and it's either going to be that one or this one. I think I'll try this one. I sometimes use this one quite often because it's a bit not too Not too harsh. Let me think. It gave us a chromatic look. Let's undo that. Let's give it a black. Let's give this dark color a black mask. Give a filter to that, and then try using the metal. See what happens. Okay, it doesn't want to put it in there. Then we do need to actually apply it here. It's been a while since I've added metal, guys. It's been a while. Let's look at this. Metal. Oh, it's because the underlayer was doing something to it. It's very shiny. Let's add a roughness and add a metallic. And now we're better. There we go. So what we needed to do is we needed our main metal, right? And we needed to add a color, roughness, and metallic, and then apply the filter for a metal. So you right-click, add filter, click the filter, and add a metal. You don't need a mask for it. And you can now mess around with it. And it just gives you a slightly more realistic metal look, and you can play with these settings to change the scale and the resolution of certain details, and you can make it look just a little bit more metallic. Play with how much you need. And this is kind of, it's just a subtle change, but it makes it a bit of a difference. So this is what we have now, and this is what we had before, right? So it just makes it a little less CG, and that's fine. That's what we want. Let's move on. Let's leave that metal alone. We can do some more stuff to it later on a detailed pass. Let's go to copper, and for copper we're gonna do something quite similar. I'm gonna choose or brass or whatever it's supposed to be. I'm not too certain what brass looks like at the moment. You should have references open for yourself. As I always say in the videos, I'm doing this quick so you can see it. So make sure that you don't do like me, and hopefully you'll actually have a reference. Now let's do our metal again, and I'm not sure. Let's see, let's go for this one. And let's, oh my gosh, that's too intense. That's so intense. Let's reduce the chroma. It's golden. And let's go to this and let's just change the scale. I don't like this one. Let's do a different one. Let's use the one we used before. It just works a bit better, this one. But again, this is metallic. I need to use actual reference of brass and stuff to see how it looks. This is just a bit too basic, but again, we'll leave it for now and we'll do a detailed pass on it afterwards. And then on plastic, I want this to be dark plastic, and I'll make it bluish greenish. Gives us a nice little rubbery look. And then on top of this, I'm going to double click it. I'm going to change the color to something a little lighter, just a little bit lighter. I'm going to right click and give it a black mask. And then on this black mask, I'm going to put a fill. And then in here, in my textures, I'm going to type in, actually, I'll just go to all, and I'll type in noise. And actually, we have noise right here straight away. So I'm going to use I think I'm going to use a Perlin noise, and just drag that into that fill. And what that's going to do is it's going to put noise on the asset, and you can play around with it a little bit. I'm going to increase the contrast, reduce the contrast, something like this. And then I'm going, can we invert it? There's no point. Let's scroll up and increase the scale. Or does it not like that? I don't think it likes that. Oh, noise parameters, that's what I want. Increase the scale, so it's quite small. And then we can change the color a little bit, see whether we want something darker or something brighter. I want something like this. I think that's kind of cool. Now, it's a bit samey, isn't it? It doesn't really make much of a difference. So let's do this. Let's add roughness change. And let's make it so that the noise that's brighter is a little bit brighter, and that the underlayer has roughness as well, and it's a little bit lower. oh, sorry, the opposite. The under layer has to be higher roughness, and this one has to be lower roughness. So now when it rotates around it, it gets a bit of a change in lighting, whereas if I take the roughness off, it's just the same, right? So there's a subtle difference. And we can also add height information, and we can just make it so that the noise pops out a teeny tiny bit. Not too much, because it's going to look really weird, but just a tiny bit. And now you have additional information that makes it look a bit different. Now, I'm not saying this looks great. We haven't done a detailed pass yet, and I'm, doing it quickly. But it's a start. Curious. I'm not 100% happy with it. Ooh, there we go. Ooh, there we go. We can do something like that. Increase the roughness of the noise. A little bit of opacity. And right now it's in the green. I want it to be in the blue. There we go. And that will look a bit more rubbery. Alright. We've got something weird. This is the weirdest lamp I've ever made. I don't even know what I'm doing. But we're going with it. There we go. That's a bit more bronzy. There we go. We want to need some more red. Okay. So we've done our first initial thing. Like I said, we have a base color, and then I made a folder for each different material, and I went through and I added a base color to each material and a little bit of detail. So for metal, I added a metal filter, and for rubber, I added another color with noise and changed the roughness and height values to make it a bit more rubbery. Now what I would do after this, I could go in and do a bunch of stuff. So you could go in with the copper, you could add another layer on top of that. Let's leave it just as color for now. And you could grab something like color like this, let's say. You can grab one of your brushes, so go down to brushes, right, and grab one of, probably crystal might be useful for the metal. Now I'm going to add a black mask to this red, and then I'm going to add a paint layer to the mask. And with the crystal brush, I could just go in here, lower my flow if you have a pen, and make sure it's using pen pressure. And then you can go in here and you can like lightly paint in some detail changes. And I used red to begin with because I just wanted to show you the effect. But then you can come back to your color. You can change it to whatever you want it to be. Let's make it something like dark like that, some kind of like weathering. And then you can also add the metal slider. So we can make it so that, when something rusts or gets covered in dirt or just has some wear on it, it doesn't look as metallic anymore. So you can lower the metallic level a bit to make it look less metallic. You could also add a height level and increase the height level a little bit, just a bit, to make it look like that's actually a separate detail that's occurring there. And you could then go through and you can start painting in this detail on certain areas of your model to create more of interest, more variation in the detail, right? And you can use your intuition as to where this should go. So I'm putting it in areas of bending and areas of variation. You'll notice that it's not a very high resolution texture because the asset is actually a bit small, but when you see it from a distance, it still has quite a nice effect. And putting in these breakages of detail does a lot to just make it a bit less samey and gives you a bit more things to look at. Actually, I don't know whether it would be there. Press X on your keyboard to reverse the mask painting. I think it would be on the borders a little bit, maybe, but definitely around here. I think you'd find it around here quite a bit, and definitely on the balls, the little bearings that have the connections. Right. So the higher resolution your texture, the better quality these will look. If I just temporarily, whoops. Where are we? Here. Okay, so if I just temporarily go to my texture set settings and move to 4K, it's going to upscale everything. And now you can see that, the detail we're painting is a bit more like that. But this is a small assets that you see from slight distance, so we don't need too much of that effect going on. And I would go through and I would paint something like this and all the details. But wait, there's more. It's like I'm selling you a car or something. There's more. So let's go to let's go back to this thing, because I think honestly I've made this a bit strong, this thing there. So let me see if I can reduce the intensity of that. Brushing intensity a little bit less, because I just like how shiny it got, but it was just very strong. Maybe just a bit more. It's so obvious. What if we change the scale? No, I'm just going to reduce the intensity. It's a bit too strong. It still looks alright. Ish. This is just difficult to do because it's such a big thing. But let's add some more stuff in here. So let's something I did not do is add my color detail layer. So let's add another solid layer on top of all of this, maybe below the weathering that we just created. And it's just going to be a solid color for now. We'll just make it red so we can see it. We're going to add a black mask as before, and we're going to add a generator. And generators can be used to make a bunch of different stuff. You can play around with them and see the different effects that they can give you. But what I want to use them for is this thing here called curvature. And curvature is going to essentially put the color on the borders of your asset. Now, to begin with, it actually just leaves the borders visible, and I want to reverse that. So I'm going to go to global invert and reverse that. I believe that did it. Let's leave it like that for now. Now, right click on your mask once more and go to levels. And now with these levels, you can change how much this comes through, right? You can change how much it comes through, and you can play with these sliders to essentially get different effects. First thing I do actually when I put a levels in there is actually do the invert, and then you can adjust more carefully what's going on. So now we have a much more subtle effect on this. And what we can do now is we can go back to our color, change it to something that makes more sense. So this was solid yellow before, right? So let's contrast this solid yellow with something purpley, or something like that. Maybe even slightly towards the blue, the metallic blue, something like that. And we can also add a roughness layer, so we can make variation in the roughness that we see. Or we could even add a variation in how metallic it is. So by default it's metallic, and we can turn the metallic down ever so slightly. And I think I will change the roughness just a little bit. Right, so now we're manually creating that metal effect that we were looking at in our preview, and we're manually creating some variation in the asset. No, I still don't like that blue. So what if we could go dark, but I think it's just the color itself. I think I want to keep it around the purple. And let's turn that off, and you can see that it's just creating a little bit more interest. It's just creating a bit more darker area. Now some areas are a bit too strong, like here. So I'm actually gonna click back on the mask. I'm gonna add a paint, and I'm gonna paint some of this away because it's too strong and I don't want it there. Now something they say about texturing is work in high resolution, then go down. So if I was actually properly doing this, I would probably be working in 4K, making sure it looks good in 4K, and then going back to 2K when I'm exporting it. For the sake of this video, I'm not going in that high detail because it would take me a little longer to actually go through those details. Now I would, and you can actually start adding this curvature darken effect to other areas as you see fit. So that was me switching between like 3 different topics of discussion there. Apologies. There, so we can do like some stuff like that. Yeah, and this very sharp look is a bit weird. But you know, you don't have to have this be metal. Like you can make this white plastic. You can use whatever materials you like. Anyway, okay, so we have a lamp. I'll very quickly show you what you can do with this. I won't finish it or anything. I'll just show you that you can add a solid color. You can use curvature and all that other stuff I talked about to do whatever you wish with it. And you can use noise to make it look more like plastic and whatever you wish to do. But the only thing I want to show you is that you could also add a solid color, make it red, turn everything else off, give it a black mask, give it a paint. You can come in here, you can grab, you can go to alphas at the top. Actually, first grab a basic hard brush, right? Then go to alphas, find a square shape, and you can probably just search square, right? You can grab something like, let's grab this. Then you can, in your menu, or just by right-clicking, you can change the angle so that it's pointing directly up. And then you can also increase the spacing. And you can do something like this. Oops. We don't want to change the, no pressure for size. And then you can go back to your color and you can turn it to something dark. And then you can click height and just reduce the height and you have a little socket. Now it's a bit funny looking, I must admit, but you can do that. And if you want it to be more precise, instead of essentially trying to guess where this should go, you can create your own alpha for a plug socket and use that, and it will, you know, paint everything you need straight away. You don't need to try and guess it with a cube. You can literally make a, do they have one? They might have one. No, they don't have a plug. No, they don't have a socket. Free, no, they don't have, this is the closest you get. Yeah, so that's something you can do with a plug socket. And you can also like use this height feature. Let me just increase the roughness so it's not shiny. Darken it a bit, not too much. You can also reverse this. So let's reverse this but increase the height, and you could probably create like a, let me remove this paint and add a new paint. Add a, oh man, I did the thing. Square. Thank you. You'd probably add like a little button you can click or something. And let's add a, duplicate that and just make it red. And then grab our paint and we'll just take away something like that. You could add like little fun stuff and play with it, but again, it's, if you wanted a switch, it would be better to model the switch, and if you wanted accurate socket holes, you would probably have to make an alpha yourself in Photoshop or whatever other program you want to use, Illustrator. But again, this looks bad, guys. I spent no time on this. Make sure it looks detailed. Add detail. Add highlights. Add shadows. Don't just leave it as a white cube, even if it's just something you plug into the wall. If you look at a scene like this, the lowest resolution asset is the one that's gonna be the most visible. Whereas if you look at a scene completely filled with high, even if one of your assets is absolutely amazing, if one of the assets looks like garbage, it's gonna make the others look bad too. So last thing I want to show you is table stuff, and then I'm going to export the assets. I'm going to combine them, export the textures. I'm going to combine them. I'm going to export the assets, and we're going to open a Unity scene. But I do believe that the Unity scene I will show you in a following video, so I can take a little break. And the only thing I want to show you about the wood, because I've already kind of shown wood a little bit, and you can find a lot of very useful resources on how to do wood in different ways. Let's go to wood. Let's add our base color. Everything's going to be wood, so I'm not worried too much about the other stuff. Always start with just color. Choose something that looks like wood. And right here, you would need to use reference. Like, you need to use reference throughout your entire texturing process, right? You need to go on gosh darn Google, and you need to search brass metal. You need to search and see how, go away. You see how it looks like. You can be really specific as well. Brass lamp, and you can see what different lamps made of brass look like. Look, mine looks nothing like this. And now I see that it has this polished look. I didn't have to use the, you know what, I'm going to change it right now because that really annoyed me. Let's go back to our copper. And where's the metal? This is the metal, isn't it? Change it to the one that is shiny. That is like that. Exactly. And here I'm going to change the scale so it's a bit higher, or change the brushing intensity to something a bit lower. And this looks a bit better already. See how good reference is? Notice one thing though, this one's going around it, kind of nice. This one isn't, this one's going sideways. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a black mask on this. And, oh no, sorry, I'm gonna add a white mask to this because it's already inside a group that's masked. And I'm just going to select the selection tool and take away this. And then I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm going to give it a black mask, and I'm going to make it so it only selects this, right? So now there's two separate layers for these materials, and the reason I want to do that is just because I want to rotate this one 90 degrees. And now we get something like this. And notice how when you have hard edges like this, it actually affects your bake. So that's why you need to soften edges that should be soft and harden edges that should be hard, right? Otherwise you get kind of effects like this. It's kind of ruin the lighting in a way. So I can reduce the length of these a bit, reduce the intensity even further, and increase the scale a little bit. Now we have a slightly nicer lamp, I think, than before. Looks less crazy. Cool, sorry. Yeah, use example, use reference. Look at these darkened edges on the borders. Look at these darker crevices on the inside. Look at the specific. This is information. You don't know what you're doing if you don't have this information. Use my example of making a crap lamp because I didn't use reference. So you can see how even the in-betweens of these lines going across are darker. So there's lots of material information in this stuff. So let's just look at like solid wood table, right? So if you want to make a table like this, you need to use references to show you this information. If you want to make a plywood, which is what I think I'm going to go for, they have a different look as well. If you want to go MDF, right, and you could even go chipboard. And all of these, every single one of these tables looks completely different. The materials are completely different. You will not remember what things look like. Don't go off your own memory or your own assumption. Study the reference. Look at the light. Look at the layers of detail. The layers of detail. Look at this. This is a really good example. Lever patina. Luis was actually telling me about this in second year because I was making lever, and he said, look at clear lever, like fresh lever is bright and light like this. It's yellow. It's untouched. It's like this. It's like this. And as you use it, as it oxidizes and your hand touch it and sweat and all this stuff, it darkens, and the areas where you touch it most and rubs most darkens. It becomes more orangey. Like there's levels of detail. So what I actually did whilst texturing lever was I started off with this color, and then I added another layer of slightly orangey that has a bit of height and comes out a little bit, because you can see this is a lot smoother than this. This is very bumpy. Then I added another layer that was darker and even more bumpy, and another layer, and my topmost layer was almost black and it was very bumpy. And all those different layers had different levels of roughness, so they got shinier as they go up, because this is not very shiny and these dark areas are much shinier. So it got shinier as it got up, and it got more height information. So it created a really cool effect. And this was all through just studying the layers of the material, studying the shininess and the difference of detail. So don't underestimate texturing and the usefulness of reference. Now, I have no idea what to do with this table. I think I would just go for very basic wood. And this table will not look great. This is not my model. This is not my plan. I do not know what I want it to look like. But I will give you some tips, general tips on making wood. So let's start with our little base color. I'll get like a woody like one here, and then I'll duplicate that and make it a little bit brighter, right? And then I'm gonna do the same thing where I add a black mask and a curvature. Not a filter, we want a generator, right? and straight away you can see it has a bit more detail, right? And something else you can do for the wood is you can make it so these edges that are cut are slightly lighter, and all you need to do for that is you need to create a new layer. Sorry, let me just duplicate the existing layer and give it a black mask. And I'm just going to select the color, make it again just a little bit brighter, a little bit more yellow. It's almost going into green actually. And go on the black mask and add a paint, and we can see our 3D and 2D view now. And thankfully, you can see that all the side bits have been mostly cut and they're quite thin. So you can just grab the UV grabber and literally just, ooh, well, these ones are those ones, aren't they? Which ones are these? Ah, they're in the middle. Okay, we do need our polygon grabber, so we can do that, like that. And here it's the thin ones as well, like that. What are these ones? No, those are those. I think the border of our table. Oh, look at that. Oh, okay, that's not so bad. We can manage that. Right, stuff like that. And you've grabbed the borders and also these ones on the bottom. For this, I can probably like grab these. There you go. And I think that's mostly all the borders. And you can grab these borders and you can just like lighten them or darken them or just make them stand out a little. So they stand out a little bit. Now let's go back to our base color and add a roughness value, because right now we don't really have any particular roughness on this table. So we don't want it to be metallic or shiny or whatever. Wood is pretty rough, so you can lower it. And shinier, brighter areas or this curvature that we've created, we can perhaps lighten just slightly. So what's our value here? 0.8. Here we can have it at 0.84 or something, or a little lower. So just a teeny bit shinier, a teeny bit of change between the two. I don't even think you can fully notice it. You can't really notice it anyway. I'll leave it there nonetheless. And go up here to this one that we made, and this is quite a lot brighter, so we can probably reduce our roughness value even further there. And it doesn't seem too much in such a situation, but perhaps under bright light you will notice some difference. And when we start changing colors and stuff, you may see some difference. You can start adding a lot of things to this. You can start adding wood grain textures if you wish. So let me just group all of this under base color. And now let's create another folder called wood grain. Right? And there's a few different ways to do wood grain. Quite a simple one is just type in wood at the top, and you're going to get a bunch of garbage. Don't use the preset materials. Please don't use the preset materials. I mean, it's just bad, guys. It's like nothing ever looks like this. This isn't artistic. You're not being an artist by dragging and dropping. It's just garbage. Please don't do that. You have no control as well. I couldn't get this look by drag and dropping, right? So please don't drag and drop crap materials. This you can use, however. You can just grab that, and let's go to our wood grain. Let's add a texture in there. And one of the main reasons you don't want to use preset materials is because you don't have any personal control. You don't have control over what you want to achieve and how you want it to look. Someone else has decided that for you already. You haven't done anything. So, but here we can create another base color. Let's make something slightly redder. And we can add a black mask. And we can help ourselves by adding a filter. Because we're going for something realistic, right? It's useful to use realistic information, but not necessarily all the information. We want to use bits of it to help us make decisions. So we're going to add a black mask, and we're going to add a fill to that mask that chooses how much it comes through. And we're just going to drag this wood onto that grayscale, right? And it's going to create something like this. Now, I think I want to invert it. And then I'm going to reduce its hardness, right? And stuff like that. And I think I want to increase its scale a bit. Increase or reduce? And there's a lot of knots. I don't want that many knots. I don't really want any knots. But you can do something like this, and this might remind you of like one of your grandma's old pieces of furniture or something. And you can now change the color to something more appropriate. You can change the height information and make it so that this actually goes inwards a little bit. And you can change the roughness as well to make it very rough, so that this inside area does not go through as much. This height is a bit too strong. I actually usually use quite low height values. Let's change our scale again. It's a bit too big. Something like that. You can change them independently as well. So if you want to like widen it a bit, but keep it long, you can do that as well. Now notice this is still going over everything. You can select it so it only goes over this bit. You can also offset it if you're not jazzed with how it's looking there. So you can do something like that. It still looks a bit weird, but I like to remind everyone that I'm not an environment artist. I know the tools and I can help you with the tools, and I can do some cool stuff with them, but give this to Matt and he will be able to show you some funky stuff. Let me put this whole, actually no, the wood grain, I'm just gonna add a black mask to that. There was me excusing myself for not knowing how to make a nice wood table, apologies. But nonetheless, you can do stuff like this so that just these areas that are flat need it. The rest don't, they're separate. And on top of this, because this is already isolated to only these areas, you can just add a custom color underneath them as well. You don't need to follow the color from the previous one. So we can kind of separate them from the rest of the the table by giving it a bit of variation, changing its roughness value. Maybe this is like polished in some way, so that it could be a little bit smoother. Now notice again, because, can you tell that here as the lighting changes? Yeah, so we can do something like this. And we can make this actually a bit less like that as well. And this color is a bit odd. We're gonna add one more thing to, interesting. Very odd. Anyway, there's a few more things we can add. We can add generators, we can add detail around them. There's different things you can do. You can use more filters to change colors. You could use different type of alphas. If you just type in grunge, you're gonna get loads of different grunge alphas which give you different details. And I'm gonna put one of these overall. I'm just gonna add a fill layer, make it a bit bright white, get rid of the rest of the details, add a fill, and pick a grunge. This one might be interesting. Hold on, let me add a black mask, apologies, and add a fill layer. And then we can add a grunge, right? And it does this. Now these default grunges are still pretty cool, but again, we can work on top of them a little bit. Change the balance of how much it comes through, and even the contrast. And you can, I don't know what this does, I'm not gonna touch that. Come back to our thing, change the color to whatever you want, reduce the opacity if you need to, if you want to. And I don't really like using grunges very much on a lot of things because they're quite strong. They're quite strong, and when they're dark, it just looks dirty. So you might be better actually using a wood color and just essentially creating color variation in your asset. And again, I wouldn't put it over everything because look, it just looks like it's been splattered, right? So be careful about how you put on details like this so it doesn't look like you've literally splattered it on the model like this. I think I'm going to put this inside the wood grain as well, actually. So it's just on these areas. And again, you can play with the height and the, I wouldn't play with the height for this one, maybe just the roughness. And create certain areas that are a little bit shinier for whatever reason, whether they're darker or brighter. And you can also always go in here with a paint. That's wood grain. You can also go in any of these layers with a paint and add additional detail using a brush. So the dirt brushes are quite useful for certain details like this. You can start adding details yourself. And this is an interesting effect. And notice again, I'm not using reference, which is why I'm struggling. Use this as an example of why you should be using reference. But adding this on the border is kind of making it like the edge is wearing a little bit. There's a bit of like color wear on the borders. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Kind of cool. Happy accident there. It happens a lot with Substance. Some of you may have heard one of the artists that was giving us a talk, Pipes, that works at Turtle Rock. He was saying you get a lot of happy accidents with Substance. It's a very useful tool in that regard. Let's do that down here. And it's just about adding a little bit of realism. If you can come up with that realism on your own, either by coincidence or planning, that's cool. Utilize it. If you learn it through research into materials and looking at materials and kind of figuring out how they work, that's very valuable as well. There. And we just created a little bit of variation, and it just gives a little bit of a kick. Now this dark thing, I think I want to lower the opacity of this. It's quite strong. It's never usually that dark, is it? That's a bit better. It's a little bit better. And then I would go through and like work on the rest of these. And you know, this kind of looks like a picnic table, to be honest, and that's probably not what your desk was going for. You were probably going for metal and plastic. But look at your references from IKEA as well. Look at how those things are made. Look at the materials of the assets in IKEA as well. All right, so let's export these, compile them, and then I'm going to take a break, and then we're going to put everything into Unity and set up our Unity project, which is going to be fun. So to export all of this, make sure I'm not on 4K on any of this. You want to go to File, Export Textures, and 2048 is fine. You want to choose Targa, which is here. You want to choose the location, so I'm going to go to desktop for me because I'm doing this now. Unity 5 standard metallic. You want dilation transparent on this setting, dilation transparent, and you want to set it to 2 pixels. Remember when we added the 2 pixels distance on the UVs? That's why, so that we can create this kind of, it's essentially going to make the texture and then it's going to expand it by 2 pixels so that we don't have any little black lines on the borders of our UVs. And then you just click export. And that's us done. If we go back, I'm going to save. And then duplicate anything that I know. And if I go back to my desktop, you can see it's exported all of these textures for the separate assets. So we have asset, lamp, transparency, albedo transparency, smooth, blah, 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 all of this stuff, right? So let's open up Photoshop, and I really hope that 2020 works on this computer. Please. Come on. Yeah, it works good. No, it doesn't. Oh, gosh darn it. Okay, let's use CS6. You notice that recording tutorials on the Sunday makes me act a little less professional at certain times. It happens. We'll do this, and then we'll call it. And feel free to skip forward to the point where I'm actually doing it. Although I have just started doing it, so there's nothing to skip. So you want to change your a new document, and the size should be the size of the maps you exported, so 2048 by 2048. Make sure it's 72 pixels an inch, and OK. And then we want to go here, and we want to drag in all of these. So select all of them and drag them in, right? Now make sure they're right in the center. So this alignment here should say 1024 by 1024, and just press enter, enter again, and just you can even hold down enter and just let go after a while. And it's going to import all of them. And the usefulness of this is it's importing them per asset and in order. So if I widen this a little bit, you can see normal, metallic, albedo, normal, metallic, albedo, normal, metallic, albedo. Excellent. So grab them one by one and group them. So all the normals in one, all the metallics in one, all the transparency in one, right? Albedo. So this is albedo. This is metallic. And this is normals. So what I would usually do is I would put the albedo at the top, right? And I'll rasterize everything. I'll rasterize all of them. So you want to go rasterize layers. And I'll grab the very top one and I go to my magic wand and I'd click on the empty space and I delete. And then the one below that, I delete the same. But the very bottom one, I wouldn't delete. So now they're all on the same texture sheet like they were supposed to. And then we can merge them, right? But before I do that, because they're in the same order, so this is table transparency, table normal, table metallic, I can grab the one for, you know, this like I was doing. So let me undo that stuff, right? So I can be like, okay, let's start. And I'm gonna grab the one for the table, and then I'm gonna go down to the table for the normal and do the same thing. And then the metallic and smoothness and do the same thing, right? And then let's go for this little guy. Bam, 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 and we're done. We don't have to do it 9 times. We only have to do it twice. We don't have to grab the magic wand every time, because on your normal maps, it's impossible to grab empty space. I mean, okay, it grabbed a little bit, but oh no, it's because I've selected it up here. So let me hide these. So these are our normals for the lamp, right? You can't grab those. It's not going to work. So that's why you grab the ones for the color, and then whilst that selection is still active, you go down and delete it for the rest. So let's then merge all of these down. So our color merged down, our normals merged down, and our metallics merged down, because, you know, because we made them into separate texture sets, it exported the textures separately and we had to combine them here. And you can save this as table lamp texturing or textures. Save that. And now let's export our albedo as a targa. So table lamp albedo. Then we want to do the same thing for normals. Targa. Table lamp normals. And we want to do the same thing for our metallic and smoothness. So targa, metallic. Okay, let's save this, close it, and we're done. We have our assets. Ooh, let's export this for Unity. And we'll come back afterwards and essentially we just need to export these UVs. I think something's missing. Why is this invisible? Very strange. Existing material number 1. There we go. I don't know why that was invisible. So you want to export each of these separately. Not the ones for substance, just the original UV'd ones. You want to export each of these separately for Unity. So export selection on the desktop, and you can call it geo table, or you could call it geo table is fine, and keep the same settings as before. Do that for the lamp, geo lamp, and we'll do that for the socket as well. Geo socket. Right, and that's ready. Now we are absolutely ready. In the next video, I'm going to take these FBXs that I've just created and the textures that we've made. We're going to open and create a Unity project. We're going to put our assets inside, and we're going to assign their materials. What we're not going to do is essentially make the scene pretty. We're not going to play with lighting. We're not going to play with custom shaders. I'm just going to put the stuff in there. And in the next few weeks, I'll put out a video on texturing the walls and the floors, and also on making the scene pretty and having nice lighting and all of that stuff. So thank you for watching. I know it was a long one, hour and a half, goodness me. But I've been talking the whole time, so there's not much to edit anyway. I hope that was useful, and I'll see you for the next one.